I sold my sun-drenched village home, a lifetime of memories, lured by my daughter's promise of family closeness. Instead, I found myself an invisible ghost in her pristine city apartment, my voice shrinking with each silent, dismissive morning. What she didn't know was that the pointless hobby I'd secretly harbored for decades was about to turn my quiet life and her meticulously crafted plans upside down. Before we jump back in, don't forget to subscribe while you're listening, and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, take a breath and listen closely. This is my story. I traded a lifetime of belonging for a cold, empty silence. The ghost of sun-warmed wooden floors still clung to my memory, a phantom comfort of my village home. I could almost smell the freshly turned earth from my garden, hear Robert's easy laughter echoing in the quiet spaces. That was where I belonged, where every creak and whisper spoke of family, of a life well lived. But I sold it all, packed decades of my past into impersonal boxes, lured by Jessica's promise. Her city apartment, all angles and gleaming surfaces, felt like a museum exhibit rather than a home. Sunlight, when it dared to penetrate the vast windows, bounced off chrome and glass, sharp and uninviting. My designated room, a sparse space near the laundry, offered only a twin bed that dipped like a shallow grave. Nights were a torment of muffled city hums, a jarring symphony compared to the crickets and distant train whistles that lulled me to sleep in the village. A constant, aching regret tightened my chest. I had exchanged a vibrant past for this chilling, profound invisibility. Mornings became a silent ballet of polite dismissal. I'd rise early, the coffee maker's soft burr a lonely soundtrack, hoping for a shared moment, a real conversation. Instead, Jessica would materialize, a blur of expensive athleisure and urgent phone calls. "Morning, Mum. Huge pitch today, gotta fly." Her voice, bright and practiced, echoed off the high ceilings, a fleeting sound that never lingered. She'd grab a to-go mug, a swift, almost mechanical peck on my cheek, then vanish, leaving behind the faint, unsettling scent of her designer perfume. I'd watch the sun climb over unfamiliar skyscrapers, my coffee growing cold, feeling the vast, unbridgeable distance between us stretch with each passing minute. Michael, my son-in-law, was a master of silent torment. He moved through their pristine apartment like a king surveying his empty domain, radiating an undeniable air of ownership that excluded me entirely. When I dared to offer a comment during dinner, perhaps about a documentary or a cherished memory from my nursing days, he'd offer a curt nod, eyes glued to his tablet. Then, his voice flat and authoritative, he'd launch into a monologue about his latest tech venture. "Of course, Dorothy," he'd drone, without truly listening. "The market demands innovation, not sentiment." His words, heavy and dismissive, left me feeling like an uninvited spectator, a quiet hum in the background of their vibrant, self-important lives. My attempts at connection, like fragile birds, would simply flutter into the air, unheard, unacknowledged. My voice, once vibrant and clear in my own home, seemed to wither here. I tried, one last time. "Jessica, darling, remember that little antique shop in the village? They had the most lovely porcelain teacups, just like the ones your grandmother adored." Jessica's smile would tighten, a hurried, artificial flash. "Oh, Mom, that sounds sweet, but we're really into minimalist design now. Clutter-free, you know." Michael, oblivious, would grunt, eyes still fixed on his glowing screen. Each dismissal, a precise, tiny cut, accumulated into a gaping, festering wound. I started to grasp the brutal truth. My presence was merely tolerated, my needs utterly unheard, my entire past deemed irrelevant. The days blurred into a suffocating rhythm. Silent breakfasts, solo walks through indifferent, crowded parks, and evenings spent confined to my room while Jessica and Michael entertained. I'd hear their bright laughter from the living room, muffled by my closed door, and it would twist inside me, a dull, persistent throb. I felt the slow, agonizing process of erasure. I had sacrificed my independence, my comfort, my very world, for a family that seemed to have no space for me, save for a small, unadorned room and a quiet expectation of my complete subservience. The question lingered, a searing ember in the quiet hours. Was this truly the future I had bought? Or had I simply paid for my own disappearance? The quiet hum of the air conditioning unit in my small room became my constant companion, a steady backdrop to the growing silence of my days. Jessica and Michael moved through their lives with an oblivious efficiency, their voices often reaching me as distant echoes of laughter from the living room, sharp bursts of business calls, or the clinking of glasses when they entertained. I'd watch the city through my window, a sprawling tapestry of lights and movement, feeling like a single unraveled thread. The ache in my chest was now a familiar throb, a quiet lament for the life I'd exchanged. I tried to fill the void. I'd read, mostly old paperbacks I'd brought from the village, their worn pages a comforting contrast to the stark newness around me. I'd knit, the repetitive motion of the needles a soothing distraction from the gnawing emptiness. But my mind kept drifting back, to the sun-drenched kitchen, the scent of wood smoke, the feeling of damp soil between my fingers. This apartment, for all its sleek modernity, offered no such solace. It held no echoes of my history, no space for my quiet grief. One afternoon, rummaging through a forgotten box tucked under my bed, a box labeled Miscellaneous Sentiments, my fingers brushed against something unexpectedly soft, yet substantial. It was an old canvas-bound notebook, its cover faded, tied with a thin, brittle leather string. My heart gave a little jolt. This wasn't just any notebook. It was the manuscript, my novel, the one I'd poured my soul into during my 30s, late into the night after Robert and Jessica were asleep, before life's demands had silenced my creative spark. I pulled it out, the dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight that fell across my bed. The pages, yellowed with time, still held the crisp, precise handwriting of a younger, more ambitious Dorothy. I remembered the passion, the secret joy I'd felt creating that world, those characters. I'd never shown it to anyone, not really. Robert had glimpsed it once, just a fleeting glance at the cover, and simply nodded, preoccupied. Jessica, even as a child, was more interested in dolls and playtime than my quiet, pointless hobby, as she later called it. The manuscript felt like a whisper from a forgotten self, a life unlived. Days bled into evenings as I reread it, page by page. I rediscovered not just the story, but the woman who wrote it, a woman who dreamed, who felt deeply, who had a voice she hadn't yet learned to silence. The words resonated with a fresh clarity, as if time had polished them. A bittersweet realization dawned. This part of me, this creative spirit, had been buried under years of domesticity, of being mom and wife, of prioritizing everyone else's needs and dreams over my own. Michael's dismissive comments about Jessica's creative writing phase in college echoed in my mind. Pointless, unless it pays the bills. He would never understand this. One Tuesday, I sat on the small bench in the apartment building's shared garden area, flipping through my manuscript. It was a rare, warm day, and the crisp autumn air felt invigorating. A woman approached, her smile soft and unhurried. "Lovely day for it, isn't it?" she said, settling onto the bench beside me. She was Susan, my next-door neighbour, a kind soul I'd exchanged polite nods with, but never truly conversed with. "Indeed," I replied, trying to fold the manuscript quickly, a sudden flush of embarrassment colouring my cheeks. "Oh, don't hide it." Susan's eyes twinkled. "Is that a book? Did you write it?" Her genuine curiosity was like a splash of cold water after years of parched indifference. I hesitated, then slowly unfolded the pages. "It's an old novel," I admitted. my voice a little rusty from disuse. From my youth. Never thought much of it. Susan reached out, her fingers delicately touching the faded cover. Never thought much of it, she repeated, a gentle disbelief in her tone. Dorothy. A creative endeavor. A novel. That's a treasure. Have you ever thought of sending it out? The question hung in the air, bold and unexpected. I felt a dizzying mix of fear and a fragile spark of hope. Oh no, I said quickly. It's just a hobby. Besides, who would publish something from an unknown, older woman? Susan laughed softly. Age has nothing to do with it, dear. And unknown just means you haven't been discovered yet. It's beautiful, Dorothy. You poured your heart into it. That counts for something. Her words, simple yet profound, cracked open a door I hadn't realized was still there. She encouraged me, not with grand gestures, but with quiet conviction. You have nothing to lose, Dorothy. Just a stamp and an envelope. The idea settled into my mind like a foreign seed, slowly taking root. That night, sleep came fitfully, haunted by old dreams and new possibilities. The next morning, fueled by Susan's encouragement and a simmering defiance against the quiet erasure of my life, I found a publishing house online that accepted unsolicited manuscripts. My hands trembled as I carefully packed the faded pages into a large envelope, sealed it, and addressed it. It was a small, almost insignificant act, yet as I walked to the mailbox on the corner, the weight of the envelope felt momentous. Dropping it into the slot felt like a silent rebellion, a small, defiant whisper into the vast, indifferent city. What could possibly come of it, I wondered, as the red flag snapped shut. The mailbox swallowed my hope whole, spitting out only silence for weeks. Every morning became a quiet pilgrimage. I'd walk past Jessica's bustling kitchen, past Michael's closed study door, a silent shadow in their vibrant home, to check the mail slot. Each day, the same result. Bills, junk mail, nothing from the publishing house. The heavy envelope I'd dispatched felt lighter now, dissolving into the vast, indifferent postal system, becoming just another forgotten dream. The city, once a canvas of new possibilities, shrank around me, its ceaseless hum a constant reminder of my muted existence within it. I resumed my quiet routines, each stitch of my knitting a deliberate act of mindfulness, a way to anchor myself against the current of invisibility. Jessica's hurried departures, Michael's polite, vacant nods, they were expected now. Their lives were a whirlwind of engagements, social calls, and career aspirations, a world I orbited but never entered. Mum, Michael's firm is hosting a gala next month. It's a very exclusive guest list, Jessica had once said, her voice tinged with pride, not realizing her words were another subtle exclusion. I'd simply nodded, a practiced, hollow smile fixed on my face. My small room, with its single window overlooking a brick wall, became my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe without feeling like an inconvenience. Sometimes, a flicker of defiance would ignite. I'd pull out the manuscript, its pages now softer from my touch, and read excerpts aloud to the empty room. My characters, their triumphs and heartbreaks, felt more real than my own muted days. Susan, my neighbour, would occasionally catch my eye in the hallway, offering a warm smile, a brief moment of genuine connection that felt like a lifeline. "Still writing, Dorothy?" she'd ask, and I'd offer a non-committal shrug, unwilling to admit the crushing weight of the waiting. Yet, her simple belief had planted a seed, a quiet certainty that something, anything, might still grow. Then, one Tuesday, the shrill ring shattered the apartment's morning quiet. It wasn't Jessica's usual chipper text alert or Michael's booming conference call. This was the landline, a relic. My heart slammed against my ribs. I walked slowly to the small table in the hall, my hand trembling as I lifted the receiver. "Hello?" My voice was a whisper, a vibrant, confident female voice on the other end. Dorothy Miller, is that you? This is Cassandra Hayes from Evergreen Press." The name, the enthusiasm, It hit me like a physical shock. My knees buckled slightly, and I sank onto the hall chair. Evergreen? Press? I stammered, my mind struggling to catch up. Yes, Dorothy. We're calling about your manuscript, The Willow Tree's Song. It's absolutely brilliant. A masterpiece. We've all read it, the entire editorial team, and we are simply enthralled. We want to publish it. Internationally. Her words tumbled out, a cascade of impossible joy. The raw emotion, the stunning character development, the poignant narrative. It's everything we look for. We predict it will be a sensation. My world tilted. A masterpiece. My quiet hobby, tucked away for decades, was a masterpiece. I could only manage a choked, Are you serious? Her laugh was warm, genuine. Never been more serious, Dorothy. We want to offer you a significant advance. We're ready to move immediately. She spoke of contracts, marketing plans, release dates. I heard it all through a dizzying fog, a profound sense of validation washing over me like a long-awaited tide. My heart, so long a shriveled thing, felt suddenly full, swelling with an unfamiliar, exhilarating warmth. The next few months were a blur of phone calls and emails. My manuscript was edited, revised, transformed. The cover design, elegant and evocative, arrived in my inbox, making it feel real. When the first copy of The Willow Tree's Song arrived, heavy and pristine in my trembling hands, a wave of profound emotion brought tears to my eyes. This was my voice, bound in paper and ink, ready to soar. The book hit shelves with a quiet ripple, then exploded. An instant bestseller. Reviews poured in, gushing with praise. My story, my characters, resonated with readers across the globe. Jessica and Michael were, predictably, dumbfounded. They had always dismissed my quiet pursuits, seeing them as quaint distractions, never as potential triumphs. "Mum, your book is everywhere," Jessica exclaimed during a rare phone call, her voice laced with a confusion that bordered on disbelief. Michael, surprisingly, even managed a grudging, "Congratulations, Dorothy." Impressive. Their patronizing smiles, once so familiar, were now replaced by open-mouthed bewilderment. My newfound wealth was shocking. I bought a beautiful apartment in the city, far from Jessica's sleek, impersonal space, a home filled with light and warmth, adorned with my own chosen comforts. It was a tangible reclamation of my independence, a vibrant space where my voice would no longer be muted. As the celebratory calls and messages flooded in, a profound sense of vindication settled deep in my bones. But as I basked in the glow of this unexpected success, a faint, unsettling memory stirred, a tiny detail about the manuscript's journey to the publisher that didn't quite add up. It was a whisper of a forgotten moment, a small inconsistency that pricked at the edges of my perfect triumph, hinting at a truth far more complex than I could possibly imagine. Have you ever had a moment of pure joy, only for a small, nagging detail to suggest a deeper, more complicated truth lurking beneath the surface? The sweet taste of triumph was suddenly laced with a bitter, unsettling doubt. My beautiful new apartment, filled with sunlight and the quiet hum of my own peace, should have been a sanctuary of pure joy. Yet, even as the congratulatory calls poured in, even as I signed another copy of The Willow Tree's Song, a tiny, insidious question pricked at the edges of my mind. It was a faint memory, a whisper from the past, about how my manuscript had reached Evergreen Press. I sat by the window, my gaze tracing the city skyline, trying to recall that ordinary Tuesday. I pictured myself walking to the blue mailbox on the corner, the weight of the thick envelope in my hand, the crisp autumn air, the satisfying thud as it dropped inside. It was a clear memory, a small act of defiance. Susan, my kind neighbor, had encouraged me, but I distinctly remembered being the one to mail it. Yet something felt off, a subtle dissonance. I thought back to the weeks that followed, the silent weeks of waiting, where Jessica and Michael showed no interest in my small, secret gamble. "Still fiddling with that old story, Mum?" Jessica had asked once, her tone dismissive, a barely concealed impatience in her eyes. Michael had chuckled, better than crosswords, I suppose. Their indifference had been a constant, chilling presence. But then, I recalled a moment, days after I'd mailed the manuscript. Jessica, in a rare visit to my small room in her apartment, had spotted the empty space where the notebook usually sat. "Did you actually send that thing, Mom?" she'd asked, her voice light, but her eyes held an unreadable glint. "Oh, yes, dear, I did," I'd replied, feeling a faint blush of embarrassment. She'd simply nodded, a strange, almost satisfied flicker in her expression. At the time, I dismissed it as typical Jessica, a fleeting, superficial interest in my pointless hobby. Now, it resonated like a discordant note in my triumph. Why had she seemed so curious, so subtly invested in whether it had actually been sent? And why, when the publishing calls started coming, had her surprise been so profound, almost like disbelief bordering on shock? Her joy, if it truly was joy, had been quickly overshadowed by something else, a deep, unsettling confusion. She'd always been so dismissive of my writing, seeing it as an eccentricity, certainly not a path to anything meaningful. The pieces began to shift, slow and deliberate, like tumblers in a lock. My mind raced back to my old village home. I'd sold it quickly, under some pressure from Jessica, who'd insisted I needed to be closer, that my house was too much work for you, Mom. The price had felt fair then, perhaps even generous for a quick sale. But now, a cold dread began to creep in. Jessica had dismissed my talent, ridiculed my passion, and urged me to sell my home. And suddenly, my bestseller, my vindication, felt less like a stroke of unexpected luck and more like a calculated misstep in someone else's plan, a plan where my writing was supposed to fail, and I was meant to stay quiet, compliant. The thought chilled me to the bone. Have you ever felt the bitter sting of realizing a perceived kindness was actually a subtle act of malice, revealing a deeper betrayal than you ever imagined? The triumphant music of my success suddenly screeched to a halt, replaced by the chilling whisper of betrayal. The unsettling doubt from Chapter 4 grew, an insidious vine twisting around the roots of my newfound joy. My beautiful apartment, once a testament to my unexpected triumph, now felt like a stage where a sinister play was unfolding, one I was only beginning to understand. The congratulatory calls, the glowing reviews, all faded into background noise as a single, nagging question consumed me. How did my manuscript truly reach Evergreen Press? I sat by the window in my sun-drenched living room, the city a vibrant tapestry below. But my gaze was inward, replaying that autumn Tuesday. I remembered mailing the heavy envelope myself, the satisfying thud as it vanished into the mailbox. It was a clear, vivid memory. A small act of defiance after years of quiet submission. Yet, something persisted, a tiny burr under the saddle of my certainty. Jessica. Her reactions had always been key. Her dismissive comments about my writing, her barely concealed impatience, her subtle eye rolls whenever the subject arose. Then, after I claimed to have mailed it, her strange, almost satisfied glint in her eyes. It hadn't been concern, not really. It had been something far colder, and her utter shock when Evergreen Press called. That wasn't just surprise. It was the face of someone whose calculated gamble had backfired spectacularly. A cold, hard knot began to form in my stomach. I thought of Susan, my kind neighbour, who had given me the courage to send the manuscript. I decided a casual chat was in order. One afternoon, I caught her as she was tending to her small potted herbs in the shared garden. The scent of mint and basil hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the tightening dread in my chest. "Susan," I began, trying for an airy tone, "I've been meaning to thank you again for encouraging me to send out my novel. You know I kept putting it off, but your words really pushed me. Susan smiled warmly, wiping her hands on a small gardening towel. "Oh, Dorothy, I just told you to believe in yourself. You deserved it. I'm so glad you decided to mail it." "Yes," I said, a casual pause. "It's funny, actually. For a moment, I wondered if you might have helped it along yourself, if I'd forgotten. You know, after I told you I'd sent it, but before it actually got there." I tried to keep my voice light, but I felt a tremor under the surface. Susan frowned, her brow furrowing slightly. "Helped it along? What do you mean, Dorothy? After you told me you mailed it?" "No, dear. I wouldn't do anything like that. I just encouraged you, as a friend. I never touched your manuscript, and I certainly didn't mail it for you." Her voice was earnest, her confusion genuine. My gut clenched. The air around me seemed to thicken, the scent of fresh herbs suddenly cloying. She never touched it. This was no misunderstanding. Jessica. It had to be Jessica. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only by the distant city hum and the pounding of my own heart. The pieces didn't just fit now. They locked into place with a horrifying click. Jessica had known. She had taken my manuscript, and she had sent it herself, not out of support, but out of a perverse desire to prove me wrong, to watch my pointless hobby fail. The thought was a gut punch. My own daughter. The revelation turned the sweet triumph of my bestseller into a bitter, burning rage. But before I could fully process this profound betrayal, a new, colder thought surfaced, chilling me to the bone. Jessica had always pushed me to sell my cherished village home, citing its too much work and my need to be closer to her. Her insistence had been a constant refrain, a subtle pressure disguised as concern. But what if that, too, had been part of her deeper, selfish machinations? What if there was more to my old home than met the eye? A secret that would expose the true depths of her greed? This new suspicion, even more terrifying, sent a shiver down my spine. Have you ever felt the earth shift beneath your feet, realizing the past you thought you knew was merely a carefully constructed lie? The bitter taste of one betrayal had barely faded when the chilling scent of another began to bloom. The realization that Jessica had secretly sent my manuscript, not out of malice, but a twisted hope for its failure, was a wound still fresh. Yet, it was the thought of my old village home, the one I'd sacrificed for her proximity, that now clawed at me, whispering of a deeper, more calculated deceit. The warmth of my new city apartment, paid for by a success Jessica had tried to undermine, suddenly felt tainted. I sat at my polished new desk, the computer screen a cool blue glow in the quiet room. My fingers, accustomed to turning the pages of my novel, now hesitated over the keyboard. I typed in the address of my old home, the familiar numbers appearing on the screen, feeling like a key turning in a long locked door. The online real estate listings populated the search results. My breath hitched. The house, my beautiful, sturdy village home, was indeed listed. Not as sold, as I had been led to believe, but as pending sale. And the listing date, it was just weeks after I had moved out, and before the final paperwork for the sale I'd agreed to with the local realtor had even been signed. My original sale, Jessica had always said, was a direct, private transaction arranged through her connections. Now, a colder truth began to emerge. I scrolled down, my heart hammering against my ribs. There were multiple photos, professionally shot, showcasing every sunlit room, every charming detail of the garden I had so lovingly tended. Jessica had clearly arranged these, without my knowledge. The casual way she'd pushed me, her gentle, insistent nudges about too much work and being closer to family, now twisted into something sinister. She hadn't been concerned for my well-being. She'd been clearing me out. The listed price was significantly higher than what I had received. Not just a little, but enough to make my hands tremble on the keyboard. A substantial difference. One that would have made a world of difference to my initial move, my financial security. Jessica had taken my cherished home, the bedrock of my past, and turned it into a profitable maneuver for herself, all while parading it as a thoughtful solution for my convenience. A cold, raw fury began to bloom in my chest, displacing the initial shock. This wasn't just ingratitude or dismissal. This was calculated exploitation. She had orchestrated my displacement, not for my benefit, but for her financial gain. My own daughter, the child I had poured my life into, had actively worked to strip me of my assets, both my literary voice and my literal home, all while feigning care. The double betrayal felt like a punch to the gut. Michael, of course, must have been involved, his dismissive grunts and, of course, Dorothy remarks now ringing with a complicit, knowing arrogance. They had conspired. I closed my laptop, the screen going dark, plunging the room into a sudden, oppressive silence. The city lights outside seemed to mock me, twinkling with a vibrant energy that felt alien to the turmoil inside. I looked around my new apartment, the lovely city space I had earned through my book. It felt like a stage, the setting for a game I hadn't known I was playing. They had underestimated me, not just my talent, but my resolve. And now, I had the resources, the power, to peel back every layer of their deception. The rage was a cold, steady flame, burning away years of quiet subservience. Have you ever faced a moment where the full depth of a betrayal from someone you loved became clear, transforming grief into an unyielding desire for truth and justice? The darkness of their deception stretched out before me, a landscape I was finally ready to navigate. The glow of my laptop screen had vanished, replaced by the cool, hard light of my own reflection in the black glass. My village home, the bedrock of my past, listed for sale at a price far beyond what they had paid me. The realization was a cold, precise blade, slicing through the last vestiges of my naive trust. Jessica's subtle nudges, Michael's dismissive grunts. They weren't mere indifference. They were calculated steps in a cruel financial ambush. The quiet rage that had ignited within me now burned with a steady, intense heat. This wasn't just about my book anymore, about my voice being silenced. This was about my home, my sanctuary, the very ground I stood on, being stolen out from under me. For decades, I had been the family's quiet backbone, the one who supported, sacrificed, and never asked for anything in return. Now, that quiet strength would be their undoing. I didn't call Jessica. I didn't confront Michael. The time for emotional appeals and desperate pleas was long past. They had shown their true colors, and now it was my turn to reveal mine. This was a battle they didn't know they were in, and I intended to fight it on my terms, with careful planning and an unyielding resolve. My book, The Willow Tree's Song, had given me more than literary success. It had given me the financial power to fight back, to reclaim what was mine. The next morning, the city hummed with its usual relentless energy. But I moved with a new purpose. My first call was to Mr. Davies, the sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who had handled my book contract. His voice, usually brisk and businesslike, softened when he heard mine. "Dorothy, congratulations again on the book. Phenomenal success." I cut straight to it. "Mr. Davies, I have a new matter, and I need your absolute discretion." I laid out the facts, the sale of my village home, the price I received, and the shocking discovery of its current pending sale listing at a significantly inflated value, directly linked to Jessica. He listened, quietly, taking notes. His silence, unlike Michael's, was one of focused attention. When I finished, a long moment passed. Then his voice, calm and precise, broke the stillness. "Dorothy, this is certainly troubling, potentially fraudulent, depending on the specifics of your original deed transfer and the purchase agreement. We'll need to review every document related to that sale, every communication, every signature." He spoke of legal options, loopholes, potential paths to reclaim the property or demand proper compensation. He painted a complex legal picture, but within it, I saw a clear path, a fight, Yes, but a fight I could win. Days blurred into a focused whirlwind of legal consultations, document reviews, and hushed phone calls. My elegant new apartment, once a symbol of peace, became my war room. I meticulously gathered old papers, reread contracts, and pieced together the timeline of Jessica's manipulations, each discovery fueling my resolve. Michael's brief, congratulatory texts about my book, Jessica's saccharine calls about my health. They were like salt in an open wound, but a wound I was now actively healing with the balm of strategy. They were so utterly oblivious, celebrating their ill-gotten gains, never once suspecting the storm I was meticulously brewing. One afternoon, a crucial piece fell into place. Mr. Davies confirmed a critical detail about the original deed transfer for the village house, a clause I had overlooked, a small technicality that now shone like a beacon of hope. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a surge of exhilaration. They had thought they were so clever, so cunning, but they had miscalculated. They had underestimated the woman who had quietly held her secrets, honed her words, and now held a powerful new key to their downfall. The quiet woman they had discarded was no longer. A new Dorothy was emerging, sharper, stronger, fueled by a righteous fire. I felt the tremors of a coming earthquake, a reckoning that would shake their carefully constructed world to its foundations. And I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that I would be the one to unleash it. Have you ever felt that quiet, powerful shift within yourself, when the pain of betrayal transforms into an unyielding force for justice, ready to confront the very people who thought you powerless? The quiet woman they had discarded was no more. A storm was brewing, and I would be the one to unleash it. Mr. Davies's office felt like the calm before a hurricane. Papers lay neatly stacked, each document a precise, cold weapon in the battle for my past, my home, and my dignity. He reviewed the final strategy, his pen tapping softly against a legal pad. The evidence is compelling, Dorothy. We move forward as planned. His eyes met mine, a flicker of admiration in their depths. Are you ready? I nodded, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. The tremors of fear had been replaced by an unshakable resolve. Years of quiet sacrifice, of being overlooked, had forged me into something unyielding. I arranged a meeting with Jessica and Michael. Not at their sleek apartment, where their perceived dominance held sway, but at a neutral, upscale cafe, a place I chose. The clink of porcelain, the hushed murmur of other patrons. It was the perfect backdrop for the quiet devastation I was about to unleash. They arrived, Jessica in a tailored business suit, Michael beside her, radiating an almost arrogant confidence. They probably expected another plea, another attempt at reconciliation from their dear old mom. Their smiles were tight, practiced, already signaling dismissal. "Mom," Jessica began, her voice brittle. "What's this urgent meeting about? We're both incredibly busy." Michael merely crossed his arms, his gaze drifting around the cafe as if searching for someone more important. "It's about the house, Jessica," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. I watched their faces. A flicker of discomfort crossed Jessica's features, quickly masked. Michael shifted, a subtle tightening around his eyes. "What about the house, Dorothy?" he asked, a hint of impatience coloring his tone. I slid a folder across the polished table. Inside, a printout of the online listing for my village home, showing the inflated price, and alongside it, a copy of the original deed transfer, highlighting the critical clause Mr. Davies had found. "This house," I began, my voice clear and deliberate. "The one I sold to you, Jessica, under the impression I was moving closer to my family. The one you insisted was too much work for me." I tapped the listing. "It seems to be back on the market for significantly more than I received." Jessica's eyes darted from the papers to Michael, then back to me, her composure beginning to fray. "Mom, what are you talking about? That's private." "Oh, is it?" I countered. a slight, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. As private as you taking my manuscript, my novel, the one you called a pointless hobby, and secretly sending it to a publisher, hoping it would be rejected, thus proving your point? The color drained from Jessica's face. Michael stared, his jaw slack. The cafe's ambient noise faded to a distant hum. You sent it? Michael stammered, his eyes fixed on Jessica. You told me you didn't. Jessica's mask crumbled. I wanted her to stop, to be realistic, she blurted, her voice thin with panic. I thought it would be rejected, and she'd finally give up those silly dreams that became a bestseller. I finished for her, my voice sharper now. Dreams that allowed me to discover your true intentions. And now, my private home, the one you bought from me for a song, is about to be sold for a small fortune. A fortune you clearly intended to keep. I pushed another document across the table, a copy of the legal notice from Mr. Davies, outlining the intent to pursue legal action for the price discrepancy and the breach of fiduciary duty. Michael snatched the paper, his face paling. What is this? Are you threatening us? Dorothy, you can't be serious. Oh, I assure you, Michael, I've never been more serious, I replied, my voice holding an icy calm that surprised even me. For years, I was your quiet ATM, your conveniently invisible mother. You took my money, my time, my devotion, then tried to bury my spirit and exploit my property. But what you didn't know, what you both never bothered to see, was that the quiet woman you dismissed was also a writer. And now, she's writing a new ending to this story, one where justice is served and everything that was taken is reclaimed. The confrontation ended abruptly. Jessica, tears streaming down her face, fled the cafe. Michael, enraged and bewildered, hurled accusations about my heartlessness and greed, storming out after her. I sat there, watching them go, not with triumph, but with a quiet, profound sense of release. The silence they left behind wasn't cold or empty. It was clear, like the ringing of a bell. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering. Mr. Davies, a true professional, moved swiftly. The lawsuit for the fraudulent home transaction gained traction, the evidence undeniable. The publishing house, alerted to Jessica's deceptive actions, offered their full support, further isolating her. The news, though not public in the papers, began to ripple through their social circles. Michael's prestigious career suffered a significant blow, whispers of financial misconduct and moral failings following him like a shadow. Jessica, once the picture of polished success, found her carefully constructed social facade cracking, her friends suddenly too busy for lunches, their once frequent calls growing silent, their marriage, built on a foundation of shallow ambition and mutual disregard for others, began to unravel under the weight of exposure and financial ruin. I didn't relish their downfall in a petty way. It was simply the inevitable consequence of their choices. My focus was on reclaiming my own life, my own truth. And at the heart of that truth was my village home. The day the final paperwork was signed, confirming the repurchase of my old house, was almost surreal. The keys, solid and familiar in my hand, felt heavier than gold. I drove back to the village, the city skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror, my heart swelling with each mile. As I pulled into my driveway, the same roses I'd planted years ago, now wild and untamed, bloomed brightly, as if welcoming me home. The air, crisp and clean, smelled of pine and damp earth. I walked through the empty rooms, the sunlight pouring in through the familiar windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This house, once filled with Robert's laughter, then stained by Jessica's silent betrayal, now felt cleansed, purified. It was truly mine again, not just in deed, but in spirit. I wasn't just buying back property. I was reclaiming my history, my peace, my very self. Susan arrived later that week, her eyes wide with understanding as she walked through the familiar rooms. Dorothy, she whispered. I heard, "I'm so sorry, dear." I hugged her tightly. "Don't be sorry, Susan. This isn't a tragedy. This is a beginning." My days settled into a new, joyful rhythm. I spent hours in my garden, my hands buried in the soil, feeling the comforting connection to the earth. The scents of freshly baked bread and blooming roses filled the air. My beloved manuscript, now a celebrated novel, sat proudly on my bookshelf, its pages a testament to resilience. I opened a small writing studio in the sunroom, the light perfect for new stories. I hosted weekly dinners, not for obligation, but for genuine connection. Susan, her husband, and a few other wonderful neighbours who had offered quiet support gathered around my kitchen table. We laughed, shared stories, and simply were. This was my chosen family, bound not by blood, but by respect, by kindness, by a shared understanding of what truly matters. Jessica and Michael eventually lost everything: their city apartment, their illusions of grandeur, their standing. They vanished from my life entirely, consumed by the wreckage of their own making. I heard vague rumours, a few years later, about Michael facing legal trouble related to some shady business dealings, and Jessica struggling, unable to find work. I didn't feel triumph, not really. Just a quiet confirmation that life, eventually, settles its own scores. I often sit in my garden now, the sun warm on my face, a cup of tea in my hand, listening to the birdsong. I'm no longer the quiet, overlooked woman, nor the grieving widow, nor the invisible mother. I am Dorothy, the writer, the gardener, the friend. I am the woman who learned that sometimes the most profound love you can give is to yourself, by standing firm, by speaking your truth, and by reclaiming every piece of your life that was taken. It was a painful journey, but one that led me back to myself, stronger and more whole than I had ever been. This story of betrayal and triumph, of finding my voice when I thought I had nothing left, is my story. It's a testament to the fact that it's never too late to reclaim your power, no matter how deeply hidden it might seem. What do you think about Dorothy's journey? Have you ever had to fight to reclaim your worth from those who tried to diminish you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice truly matters to us. And if Dorothy's story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more tales of courage and